I realized that I could do way more good for the military community outside of the military than in the military.
Someone cares about you.
There's a reason why your heart is beating.
You still have a purpose.
Don't give up.
It's important to know that you're not alone.
You're not alone.
You're not alone.
You are not alone.
Today I'm speaking with David Pere, founder of the Military Millionaire community. He and his team are on a mission to help service members, veterans, and their families learn how to build wealth through real estate investing, entrepreneurship, and personal finance. And even though we missed each other during our time serving in Hawaii, I'm always happy to chat with a Marine. David, welcome to the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast.
Thanks for having me on the show, brother.
Absolutely. I will say you are the first gunny that I've met with a full beard.
Yeah, that's a whole weird story where I'd love the reserves to, actually let me do something, but it is what it is.
Well, you've done a lot to teach our service members, veterans, and their families how to go from living paycheck to paycheck to having financial freedom to live a life beyond their wildest imagination. But first, what inspired you to join the Marine Corps?
Well, it was a real inspiring story. I grew up, well, I wasn't born there, but I grew up for the vast majority of my life in Little Rock, Arkansas. Actually, a town outside of Little Rock called Roland was technically our mailing address. And Roland has, I believe, a post office and one stop sign. And so basically, I didn't have money for school. I didn't like school, and I wanted to get the heck out of Arkansas. I was like, oh my God, I want to see the world. What's the best way to do that? And I was actually homeschooled and like super conservative upbringing all the way through high school, except for one semester. And in that one semester, I'm in the school, and who do I see? Oh, wow, look at these Marines and soldiers and sailors and airmen. They all, well, not the airmen. They don't actually go to schools or recruit. People just kind of come to them. But the Marine Corps recruiter, I talked to all the branches, and, the Marines just seemed like they had it together and the most challenge. And also their duty stations are near, beaches. So I was like, this looks cool. And I got exactly what I signed up for, right? I mean, that first 4 years, I saw like 13 countries and a deployment and, all the adventure you could want as a young 18, 21-year-old kid.
Absolutely. I know for me personally, I initially joined the Navy. I was an airman in the Navy, but the job was a little bit too lackadaisical. And when I decided to become a corpsman and found out that I could get stationed with Marines, I knew that we were going to Iraq and Afghanistan to the desert. And so I figured, I can either deploy from a swamp, a desert, or paradise. And I ended up choosing Hawaii to deploy to the desert from because I wanted to be able to live this amazing life when I was back home. And I absolutely loved that. So where did your career end up taking you?
I was so first off, Okinawa, Japan. And then I went, while there, went to Afghanistan. And then I went from there to Camp Pendleton. I got stationed in Springfield, Missouri, where I'm at right now as a recruiter. And that's when I kind of started learning about real estate and all that and bought my first house. And then I got stationed in Hawaii. As we talked about before the show, right? I was at the overarching command for the battalions you were a corpsman with, which is kind of cool this is not a whole lot of people end up in the same little 3rd Marine Regiment out in Hawaii. And then finished out at 1MEF, the 1MEF command deck. I was the movement control chief for the West Coast for Camp Pendleton.
Right on. Well, I know a lot of Marines, you really focused on the job. You really, either dug in or you hated it. And it seemed like you really dug in, loved it, and then decided to start excelling and taking your enlisted paycheck and building wealth. So how did you begin taking your net worth to the next level on an enlisted pay scale without a formal undergrad education or training?
Yeah, definitely no training. A lot of books, a lot of podcasts, right? And then just kind of slowly surrounding myself with the right people. But as far as how to, without a high income, there's a lot of ways now that I know that would make it a lot easier, right? Like there's creative financing. You can do seller financing. You can do, you can take over somebody's mortgage payments on, especially if they've got like a low interest rate debt locked on a primary residence. You can raise money if you find the right deal and you've got a bit of a track record. It's actually continues to be surprising to me how easily you can find money if you've got the right deal, the right knowledge, the right partnerships. But in those early days, I didn't know a lot of that, and I didn't have a lot of confidence in most of it. And so it was a lot of I don't want to say over leveraging, but yeah, it was high leverage in not as nice neighborhoods. So, the D class neighborhoods, as they call them, they tend to cash flow more. You'll get more rent for purchase price because a lot of people avoid them. And so the property values aren't as inflated, which makes it good for building wealth. But then once you get to a certain point and time becomes more valuable, now everybody starts to shift out of that to nicer long-term holds or larger properties. And that's kind of the trajectory I followed. But it was a lot of, first property was an FHA loan, 3.5% down. Second property was, it was a 10 unit actually, but it was 85% financed from the bank and then 10% financed. The seller carried 10% back. So I only had to bring 5% down. And then, so I was trying to find really creative ways to say like, look, I know the numbers work. I'm betting on myself, but I don't have the cash to make this work. And I wish I'd known, how to raise money or been confident in it, or better with creative strategies. Because man, if I'd been able to go big in, that 2015 to 2018 window, all of those properties were immensely profitable, but I only bought like 4. So yeah.
Now, I know when I was in and junior, they were really encouraging us to start doing kind of what you did and buy a home, because you're either going to pay rent and never see any of that money back, or buy a home. But like, I know a lot of us really feared, but I'm going to be moving. I'm going to be transferring. Like, there's no way that I can maintain this house. So how did you decide like real estate was going to be the way that you were going to make money, especially because like that fear is very real for a lot of junior enlisted and even junior officers?
Yeah. When I was a recruiter, we were working ridiculous hours. I knew that like, man, I don't want to live this life forever. And if I want out, I need a way to get out that won't require me to go work for somebody else. Like I didn't want to leave the military and then get stuck, delivering mail for the post office. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that wasn't like what I didn't want to be stuck, like, oh man, I had to trade this W-2 for that W-2. Like I wanted to do my own thing. And to do that, you have to find some way to either make recurring revenue or build a business. And, it's interesting. I was actually getting solicited to join Amway, one of those magical multi-level marketing platforms that so many service members and spouses end up, driving around selling Sensi and all the normal stuff, right? And the guy handed me the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I was like, dude, I don't know the last time I read a book. Like, I'm not going to sit down and read that. And he pulled a CD-ROM out of his pocket and he was like, but you will drive, and you do drive as a recruiter. So just listen to it. I was like, oh, he called my bluff. All right, fine. I'll listen to this stupid book. And man, that changed everything. I mean, I read the book and by the end I was just like, okay, this is a way to build residual income. This makes sense. This wasn't as boring as most finance stuff. And I just kind of went down the rabbit hole. I stumbled through his books. I stumbled into Bigger Pockets, real estate podcast, and listened to a bunch of their books, listened to a bunch of their books and then their podcast. And then as I started doing more and more of that, I got confident enough to say, okay, I'm going to buy a duplex. And I did what I call house hacking, which is what I would recommend to anybody who wants to get started in this and is a little nervous. House hacking is like you buy a duplex or a fourplex, triplex, whatever, and you live in one unit, you rent the others out. I was nervous about this strategy working, so I did a duplex, and I kick myself every day for not buying the fourplex I was looking at, because I bought that duplex for $79,900 and sold it for $165,000. So had I bought a fourplex, and still doubled my cash, would have been even better. But yeah, I went from basically I was paying $550 a month to live in a 2-1 apartment. And then I went to buy this thing, and now my mortgage is $585 a month, but I have a tenant paying $425 on the other side. And so I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm saving $425 or $400 a month. And I'm learning to be a landlord. I'm getting the tax benefits. I'm all the other stuff. And then when I moved out, that thing started paying me. And I moved out in mid 2016 and I sold it in 23. So for 7 years, that thing paid me between $150 and $350 a month. And then I sold it for double what I paid for it. And, that was just like the proof of concept. Once I was done, it was like, all right, now that I know this works, like how do I buy more of these?
That's awesome. I mean, I know that you have to kind of be a little risk adverse, like not fearing that in order to step into that realm. And then on top of that, you eventually ended up leaving full-time active duty. How did you know that you had positioned yourself to make that transition financially?
Yeah. So the first part, I think that's why house hacking is so awesome, right? Because buying an investment property is scary. Buying a home is the American dream. Everybody wants you to buy a home. And so when you buy like a fourplex, you're not buying an investment property. You're buying a house. You have to live somewhere. You got to pay to live somewhere, whether it's rent or mortgage, you're paying to live somewhere, unless you get your tenants to pay for it and you can live for free or close to it. So it in my opinion, it really reduces the risk in your head, because it's like, well, I got to pay to live somewhere anyway. And if I can do that while having other people pay down the mortgage, like, that it's the easiest way to like transition into investor world. So I love it. It's interesting. A lot of people have this assumption that I left the military because I was like, oh, I'm making more money outside than in, and now I can just screw this, I'm done. And don't get me wrong, there were some moments where I was getting berated about like colors on a PowerPoint, slide deck that was going to the CG by like a major or lieutenant colonel. And I'm sitting there thinking like, dude, I make more money than you do and I work less and I'm happy about my life. Like, this is, there were some moments there where I probably got a little salty. But the reason I actually left the Marine Corps had much less to do with the finances. The finances allowed me to make that decision, but it was really just that it stopped being fulfilling for me. I ended up, there's this funny thing in the military where if you're really good at your job, you usually get to do a lot less fun stuff. So like, hey, there's a Dubai operation coming up, but we need you to stay back because you're better at this. So we'll send the other guy to Dubai. Okay, cool. Next year we'll swap. Nope, you're still better. So next year, guy gets to go do something cool. And I just realized like I guess it would have been 2020 that I made the decision, but 2021 was when I EAS'd. And in 2020, I was like, dude, it's been 9 years since I've left the country. I've not gone on the range in the last 18 months because this unit has waived it due to operational whatever. Like, I work in a skiff, no windows, no cell phone. I'm the staff sergeant and I have like a junior Marine, and it's literally like, hey, staff sergeant, we need you to take out the trash because everybody else there is like retiring age. And I was just like, this sucks. Like, this is not the adventures. This is not what I signed up for. This is not why I joined the Marine Corps. And honestly, this is hurting how many people I can reach, because by now I had the platform. By now I had already kind of built the business out, the branding, the platform. And so, people are looking up to me, and I'm hearing, I assume people are looking up to me. That's still weird to say. But like, I almost felt like I had a responsibility to the community. And then I realized that I could do way more good for the military community outside of the military than in the military. And I just wasn't feeling it at work anymore, which is why I stayed in the reserves. I stayed in the reserves in hopes that like, hey, if something kicks off, I can go. Like maybe there'll be a chance to like put me in coach, which hasn't happened at all. In fact, I haven't even showed up for drill, but
Well, hopefully one day they will, the coach will put you back in, and you can get a little bit more of that Marine Corps fulfillment that you had when you were junior. Obviously, as you start to pick up ranks, your job changes drastically. And when you're good at those senior ranks, you become more of an office individual, taking care of the inspection readiness and deployment readiness and making sure all the paperwork's locked in, because that paperwork's important to go to the congressional and up the chains. But the thing that you started doing during that time was teaching others. I noticed that your YouTube channel kind of kicked off during that time as well, those later years where you were teaching some Marine Corps stuff, but a lot of your stuff was leaning really heavily in how to position your Marines and other service members in a place where they could build wealth. How did you begin that journey to teach others how to experience financial freedoms?
Yeah, it's interesting because it wasn't planned at all to become that. In fact, it wasn't planned to become anything. That wasn't even the reason that I started it. Interestingly enough, I started it, a buddy of mine named Brandon, who's a pretty big real estate guy, was over for dinner on K-Bait because I was like, oh, I was trying to network with him. And I was like, the only way, he was thinking about moving to Oahu. I was like, the only way you get on this base to check out these beaches to surf is with a Marine escorted you on. So come over for dinner. And, and so I was trying to rub shoulders and it worked. They came over for dinner. We hung out. It was good times. But while we're sitting there, I asked him, he'd written a book or two. Now he's written like 7, I don't know. And he'd written a couple books and I was like, dude, how do you do it? And the reason I asked is when I deployed, I kept a journal and a mission log and I didn't have any intention behind them, but I was like, well, every time we go on the road, I'll just document the convoy, with a little write in the rain notebook, just 08 manifest call, 0830, depart friendly lines, like all this stuff. And then I'll keep a journal. I don't know why I thought to do this because I was not the school guy at all. I don't know, it was fate. Somebody said the right thing to me at the right time. And I was like, you're right. I'm going to want to remember this. And so then I have like journal entries that are like, on this day, I feel like this, And so literally, I did it for a buddy's Purple Heart not too long ago. I like Xeroxed and I'm like, at this time, Dave blew up. Hey, look, Dave felt like this on that day. And so like, it's pretty cool now to look back on it. But what I was thinking at the time was like, dude, there's all these books from SEALs and whatever about all the cool stuff they did. There's not a single book about like, and there's the generals. There's General Mattis writing a book about high level what happened in Afghanistan. But like, there's not a single book about like the dumb Lance Corporal in a truck driving around in the desert, blowing things up or laser dazzling camels or, all the stupid things that happen on deployment. It's like, there's nothing like that. And I have all the pieces for a raw, like authentic. So I was thinking, and I'll still write it at some point, but my thought process was to just put that out, like normal Marine crap in Afghanistan. And so I asked him how to write and he's like 1,000 words a day. I was like, cool. He's like, start a blog, and I was like, all right, sounds cool. I don't know anything about that. What should I blog about? And off the top of his head, he just was like, there's a whole lot of military people that buy houses with the VA loan. There's not a whole lot of them who talk about it, and it seems widely misunderstood. So why don't you just document what you're learning as a military guy? I was like, oh, that's cool. So like my first few articles are like how to use search terms to better search Google. Like they have nothing to do with anything. They're, I'm learning about this. But then the name From Military to Millionaire, which I also can't take credit for, a friend of mine came up with, started to attract and people started to read and then they'd ask questions and then I'd get the same question 3 or 4 times. I'd be like, okay, let me research this and answer this. And then I kind of started the whole community. It was like 9 months later, I started the podcast just really selfishly because I wanted to be able to interview people that wouldn't give me an hour of their time without paying and make it mutually beneficial. And that started to grow things. And then, man, one day in like mid 2020, the Facebook group went from like 100 people a week are joining to 100 a day, 200 a day, 300 a day. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And it wasn't until like, I was at like 6,000 people in the Facebook group and it jumped to like 40 in that year. And I was like, I have a business and I don't know what to do with it. And then I started thinking like, okay, I have like intentionally like, okay, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to, and that was when it really kind of grew into what it is now. So that's I guess the backstory on it. Yeah.
Now, you had mentioned some misconceptions about the VA home loan, and I know that your first place wasn't bought with a VA home loan because you were talked out of it. So what are some of those misconceptions for it, especially for active duty, and then perhaps even some veterans getting out?
Man, I could go on forever on this. So we'll try to keep it somewhat simple because the whole VA loan is a misconception. And I'm at the point now where I'm so fed up with for the record, I'm a licensed agent and lender. So I at least understand the industry from a fundamental level, even though I don't transact either. I got the licenses initially just because I wanted to be able to, when I was talking about it, nobody would be able to say like, you don't know what you're talking about. So, well, then I realized as I got licensed, they don't teach you anything to get your license. It's like, here's how not to be prejudiced against diversity and end up in the jail. And here's how not to, do this wrong. And like the VA backs the VA loan and you can do 0%. That's like what they tell you. I'm like, wow, cool. I knew that when I was like 18 and I don't know anything else now. And what I realized is that the biggest thing I can tell you about like misconceptions of the VA loan is if an agent, a lender, or somebody else is telling you it's not competitive or it's not a good product, that just means they don't understand it well enough. And rather than telling you to go someone who does, they're going to try to push you to a product they do understand, because the VA loan is the best primary residence mortgage in existence. I can wrap that out numerically. I can wrap that out qualitatively as far as like the VA loan is the only primary residence mortgage that doesn't require 50% or lower debt to income ratio. So you can go higher on a VA loan in purchase price than you could on any other loan product. It has better loan level pricing adjustments. So what that means is essentially once you get under 740 on your credit score, with any other mortgage, you'll have an adjustment in rate. And then at 680, you'll have another adjustment. And at 640, you'll have another adjustment. So you'll have 3 adjustments by the time you hit 640 on your credit score, meaning higher rate. With the VA loan, it doesn't adjust until 640. So someone with a 641 score with the VA loan will have effectively the same rate as somebody with an 840, while with a FHA loan or conventional loan wouldn't be the case. There's actually no minimum credit score requirement, debt to income requirement, or most things with the VA loan. So if a lender tells you, oh, you can't do that with the VA loan, the question you need to ask is, can you show me where it says that in the guidelines? Because most likely it's not actually something you aren't able to do, except for like buy a house that you don't occupy. It's most likely a lender overlay. So it's most likely that bank won't do that on the VA loan, but somebody else would. And in 2020, they removed the minimum or the cap on your first purchase or once you reinstate entitlement. And so I have a friend who bought a $2.5 million house in Dallas, 0 down, because he's well off. He had the $500,000 for a down payment, but we were talking, and at the end of it, he's like, wait, I can use the VA loan on this? I was like, yeah, dude. He's like, and pay 0? It's like, yeah. And he's like, you just saved me $500,000 on a down payment. I'm like, Merry Christmas. And then he took me out for cigars. It was a good time. But probably the last piece is you can use it multiple times. I hear all the time, you can only use it once. There's a limit. It's not competitive. All of that is hogwash. I know someone who had 4 out at the same time on VA loans, and you can rinse and repeat as you sell properties. So there's so much, but I think those are the big ones.
Yeah, the last one you mentioned, being able to use it multiple times, is really something that we were excited about because we made sure that on our first home purchase, we didn't overextend ourselves and we didn't cap out our first purchase because we just wanted a small primary residence for ourselves, especially during the pandemic when interest rates were historically low. So, let's paint a picture here now. We have a corporal, 3 years in, married, already has 1 child, probably a toddler, and a second one on the way. They're living in base housing. Now, I mean, I've known this person before, and I've seen them pick up a second job. What's something that you would say to them where they don't overextend themselves financially as well as time-wise?
Well, if they're having to pick up a second job, I'm going to assume they bought themselves a Mustang at like 25% interest. So I'd tell them to sell that and buy a Civic or a Camry. Or what I would drive, which is a diesel Jetta, because they're the best. But all of that joking and stereotyping aside, if you're really serious about starting some kind of a side hustle to bring in a little extra income, I would say find something that scales. So like something you're passionate about, like a blog or a YouTube channel or something where like it might not make a ton of money at first, but as you put time into it, it'll build and it'll create residual. It'll come back to you, because like driving for Instacart might make you like $12 to $20 an hour. You might make less than that at first, but like I make $20,000-$30,000 a month through my platform now. It took some time, but that's a little bit more than $20 an hour, depending on how many hours I work. I am a bit of a workaholic sometimes because I like what I do. So I mean, I would say if you're gonna spend your time working on something, work on building something for yourself that you have control over. But before you do that, I would say the 2 best things you could do are, 1, look at your budget and see where your money's going, because you're probably spending it on stupid things at stupid places. Like you're like, oh man, I got to go work this extra job because the military doesn't pay me enough. Maybe just drink cheaper beer or eat out 1 less time a month. Like it's surprisingly simple. not necessarily easy, but surprisingly simple to find money if you scrutinize your budget, which I'm terrible about. I'm definitely a spender, right? Which is my ex-wife always balanced it out. She was like, I'm going to do, all this crazy stuff and you're going to calm down, Dave, and you're going to use this budget, and which is great, right? And I still actually have like envelopes from when I do this, where I will put cash, every payday into an envelope and just say, that's what I spend. If I spend all of it, who cares? Because I budgeted already and I've got it set aside. So I would say just get your basic expenses understood, in line, and clean them up. You'll save the time of working on a job and probably more money, at least up front. Because I mean, the beautiful thing about with any business, cutting expenses over, if you're going to talk $100 difference in income, I would choose cutting expenses $100 every day over adding $100 in income. Now, income is obviously incrementally, you can expand it, but you've already paid taxes on the money that you're cutting as expenses. You haven't on the income. So if you make $100 extra, you're really only making 70. But if you save $100 a month, that's A, that's recurring, B, that's post-tax. So it's actually $100. But the other thing I would say is house hack. Even with a family, like a wife and a kid, go find a duplex that's a 3-2 or a fourplex that's got like a 3-2 and 3 studios, or 4 3-2s, or maybe live in a 2-1 because you've only got one kid, and that's fine. If you got kids on the way, like they can live together for a little bit. But if you do that now, instead of, let's say you're in San Diego and your BAH is $3,000, now instead of just giving that $3,000 to base housing, what if you found a fourplex where it was all 2-1s? We'll say rents $2,000 a piece. That's $6,000 coming in, and it's assuming your mortgage is $8,000, like $1 million fourplex, $1.2 million fourplex, $8,000 mortgage payment, which is probably about right. $1 million, $1.2 million, probably about $8,000. Now you're still only out of $2,000 a month, so you're saving $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year. But on a mortgage that size, you're paying down $1,500 a month in principal. So really, you're saving $2,500 a month because $1,500 is just going into an appreciating asset. And again, learn how to be a landlord, depreciation, appreciation. Oh my gosh. And imagine, if you will, just not losing that house for 30 years. What's that do to your net worth? You just became a millionaire. All you have to do is not lose the house. Probably a millionaire multiple times, because by the time you pay that thing off in 30 years, I guarantee it'll doubled in value, as long as you take care of it.
I love those thoughts, and just seeing what could happen with a little bit of letting your money work for you. So looking at it, because if you don't sit down and write down every expense you have, you're going to feel like you're broke and having to live paycheck to paycheck. But as soon as we can start reining that in and say, okay, like you said, go to one less meal out. Do one less thing. Start finding free activities. Parks are great for you and your kids. It's a great place to socialize and meet like-minded individuals. And then after you've kind of settled the majority of your debt and expenses, looking into utilizing that VA home loan and get your first duplex and start having income for the next duty station that you go to, or something that you can sell after living in that home for 2 years. I know our home increased in value when we bought it by over $100,000 in the 3 years that we lived there. And it was just something that allowed us to then go out and do this as an opportunity to start building our own community and reaching others and serving a purpose, until we can, like you said, find another job that will increase our income if need be, because there's always more money to be made, but saving money is the first step. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't learn how to save money, then you'll end up, and I know plenty of these people, you'll end up as it doesn't matter how much money you're going to make. I know people that make $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year and don't have any money. They still live paycheck to paycheck. And you think like, well, if I had $500,000, there's no way really? You wouldn't buy a nicer car? You wouldn't buy a nicer house? You wouldn't buy those shoes you want? You wouldn't buy, it adds up. That might not add up as quick as you think. It adds up.
Yeah, that dollar creep's a real thing. Expenses go up as you make more money, unless you're writing it down and going, what did I spend that on for? Like, what's the purpose of that? And start asking, why am I spending that dollar versus, hey, I really want to spend this dollar.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Dave, how can people find out more about you, the services that you offer, the coaching that you offer, and continue to learn and grow in a community of like-minded service members, family members, and veterans?
Yeah, so we've got this handy dandy book, The No BS Guide to Military Life, which is like everything I wish that I'd known when I first joined the military. It's kind of chronological, so it's like your TSP, and then it goes all the way into like special schools in the military and transitioning and your VA claim and all that stuff. But if you go to thebestpodcastguest.com, you can download the PDF of that book for free. And then it also has links to all my social media stuff. So it's, pick and choose your favorite. I would say personal recommendation, the Facebook group, we've got 63,000 and some change people in there. And it's pretty valuable. A lot of good information floating around, but yeah, thebestpodcastguest.com.
Right on. And finally, as we know, sometimes wealth, stability, and freedom isn't enough to keep people moving forward. And unfortunately, our veteran community is dying by suicide at a higher rate than our civilian counterparts. What words of hope would you like to bring to somebody experiencing a crisis in their life?
Yeah, it's interesting. I can't imagine that you found this when you were asking me to be a guest. I have an article I wrote on the whole suicide and 22 a day and all that. It's a little contrarian, probably 2 years, maybe 3 years ago. Because I fundamentally, I just hate the word awareness, because it's like, is it valuable? Yes, maybe. There's the whole contagion theory, right? Which is kind of what I talk about, where it's like, the more you talk about it, the more people kind of normalize it in their brain, and they think like, oh, this is an option. So I'm a little leery from that perspective. But the reason I don't like awareness, or the word, is because a lot of people stop there. They're like, oh, yeah, I'm doing this thing. I did some push-ups. And it's like, cool. What'd that really do? Like that, in some cases, it depends on who it is or how it happens, right? In some cases, that's an ego thing. It's like, look at me, I'm doing this thing. I fundamentally love the name of your podcast, because what I said in that book, or in that article, as my like, quote unquote, if I was to save this from happening, is find a friend and go outside, go walk, go get some freaking sun, go out in nature, go sit at a park and just enjoy life, and get around some other people, whether they're veterans or not, that care about you or that you care about. Because what you'll find is, the further you get into the depression hole, right, the further you find a windowless room and lock yourself in, and you start thinking about it, and I was like meditating on it, but you manifest essentially this hole that you can't get out of. And you're not going to get out of it by thinking about it. You're not going to get out of it by seeing somebody online do push-ups. You're going to get out of it by going and talking to somebody, whether that's a therapist or a friend or whatever, and by walking, by getting the juices flowing, by getting out in nature, and by reminding yourself that life's really worth living. Because let's be real, suicide sucks for everybody involved, and it's completely avoidable. And we have lost way too many people to it. And it's so easy to see how it happens, because people lose their purpose. They lose their identity when they get out of the military. You need to try to have those things lined up, and you need to try to find a purpose as fast as you can. And it doesn't have to be your ultimate calling in life. It just has to be something that you're passionate about, and get around people and get outside. That's my answer.
Absolutely. Awareness without action is never going to be enough. And that's why we want to bring practical solutions and resources to our community and connect them to a community of fellow people trying to improve their lives and get off that couch. That way we can actually start to solve some of these problems without needing external resources. When we talk about what we do here at the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast, we have communities set up on Strava so that you can have people that you walk with, just as a daily reminder. Hey, John went out and walked. So come join us at the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran Virtual Walking Club and be a part of that. We have other avenues like a Facebook group or private messaging me to say, hey, I'm in the middle of a crisis. What can you connect me with? So I really encourage people, join a community. Find that group of mentors that is going to lead you to the next. If you're interested in developing your finances and your professional career, check out the Military Millionaire community. Dave has tons to teach you there. And if you're looking for somebody to get outside with you, please come check us out at Strava at the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran Club. Dave, thank you so much for joining us here on the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's been a good show.